In this video, we are going to go over some Q&A from the Animo devs after the second beta. They've said some important details about the game and its release, and they've also talked about changes they're making based on player feedback from the latest beta. All right, Pathfinders, let's jump straight into it. So this is week 5 of the dev team Q&A, and it's basically the final wrap up for this test. I'm going to run through the big questions, what the team actually said, and then I'll add a few extra official dev updates that dropped during CBT2 as well, because those posts basically answer a bunch of the same questions people keep asking in the Discord every day. Okay, first question they picked was about design. Like, how do they actually come up with Animo designs? What's the process? And can they give an example, specifically Inferlupa? And the devs started by saying thanks for the love Inferlupa got during the test. They said they really believe people appreciated it as a new branch of the Ember Pup family. Then they broke down the idea using Inferlupa as the example. So lore-wise, Inferlupa starts from Flammeruff. Flammeruff is basically desperate to become the best in the family, right? So it's always competing with other Flameruff. And even Scorch Howl, but it never wins. For whatever reason, bad luck, fate, it just keeps taking the L, and they said that sorrow turns into obsession, and then Flamruff, who feel the same way, gather together, and that becomes Inferlupa. That's the story hook. Then they talked about the look. They said Scorch Howl already scratches that itch for people who want the more human-shaped Ember Pup vibe, so for Inferlupa they wanted something more animal style and shape. And yet, if you've seen Inferlupa, you can probably guess where they were going, because they straight up said the vibe is very reminiscent of Cerberus, the three-headed dog from Greek mythology. So that's the full concept. Story first, then shape and silhouette decisions, then the myth inspiration layered on. Second question was the budget, and honestly, this one was funny because they basically said, top secret LOL, like thanks for asking, but they're not answering it. Third question, will there be a third closed beta or an open beta? Their answer was pretty clear. They're not considering an open beta right now, but they do want to find an opportunity to hold another test before global launch. So if you were hoping for a huge open beta where everyone can jump in, right now it doesn't sound like that's the plan, but another test before launch still sounds possible. Fourth question, is there an Android test planned, like the iOS test they did between CBT1 and CBT2? They said an Android test is under consideration, but now that CBT2 is over, it would have to happen later. So again, nothing locked in, but they're clearly aware people want it. Fifth question, do they have a release date for PS5 in mind? And they basically said they'll communicate more on other platforms and a specific launch date later. So no PS5 date yet, no extra specifics yet, just we'll talk about it later. Now, question 6 is the one that got a lot of people talking because it's about how done the world can feel over time. The question was, will collectibles in the world like chests, eggs, and Lumin Amber respawn in the main game? And the player asking it made a really fair point. In a short beta, it's fine if things don't respawn, but in the full game, if the big collectibles are finite, then exploration could drop off a little hard once you've cleaned an area out. Like you do that initial sweep, you grab everything, and then after that the world can feel kinda empty, and getting resources might become annoying. They even suggested something like a weekly respawn timer for certain stuff. The dev response was pretty direct. They said chests and eggs are resources that will not be replenished repeatedly. Their reasoning is that exploring Edel is a key part of the journey, so they want to encourage people to go deeper into the world rather than looping the same spot forever. But then they separated Lumin Amber from that. They said Lumin Amber is highly connected with your stage in the journey, so they won't repeatedly provide it in the same place, because that wouldn't be fair. The way they described it is basically, as you explore further, you find more Lumin Amber along the way, and it grants you more abilities to go further, and that's the intended progression loop. So the takeaway here is no respawning chests, no respawning eggs, and Lumin Amber is capped and tied to progression rather than farming one location. Then question 7, will events or limited time features be repeatable or return occasionally? This is the big FOMO question. People worry that if they miss an event, they miss it forever, and that kind of design can really mess with enjoyment for a lot of players. The question even gave examples of games that try to reduce that pressure, like Helldivers 2 keeping battle passes available, or Monster Hunter style event quests coming back around during seasonal festivals. Basically the idea that new players aren't locked out of content forever. The devs said they got a very similar question last week and pointed people back to last week's Q8. They apologised that the current design makes players feel that way and said they're taking the feedback into consideration and they'll share a more detailed plan in the future. So it's not a hard promise yet, but it is them acknowledging the problem and basically saying, we hear you were thinking about it. Question 8. People have heard the game is planned around summer, but is an estimated month known. They said they can't be more specific yet, but they'll share the date as soon as it's confirmed, and they thanked everyone for being patient. So for now, it's still summer as the rough window, but no month announced. Question 9. Are we getting more bonding interactions with our Animo? Like petting them, giving treats, stuff like that? They said yes, and they called it one of the most exciting design features they're planning to implement, and told everyone to stay tuned. So that's a clean W. If you want more bonding and personality stuff, it sounds like they're actively building toward it. Question 10, co-op multiplayer expansion. And this one was pretty detailed because the player is basically saying, in a lot of games like this, exploring with friends feels pointless because only the host gets the big rewards and that kills the incentive to explore together. They said Animo already improves this in a lot of ways, but Lumin Amber is still an issue because it's so important to progression. And it's exhausting if you have to explore every nook and cranny multiple times just because you weren't the host. The devs responded by saying they want to balance solo gameplay and multiplayer gameplay at the same time. They said they will definitely add more multiplayer gameplay in upcoming versions and in time for the official launch period. But they also mentioned they've received suggestions from players who don't want to be forced into multiplayer for specific missions, so they're not planning to add more obligatory multiplayer experiences. Instead, they want more optional multiplayer possibilities. So you can enjoy Idle alone or with others without the game pushing you into it. And that was the last Q&A question from this test, and they ended it by thanking everyone who submitted questions and saying they could feel the love and support, and they hope people enjoyed Idle during the test, and they're looking forward to seeing everyone again. Now, quick extra section here, because there were also official dev updates posted during CBT2, and these matter because they show what feedback actually turned into real changes. One of the big things they addressed was clarity around evolution requirements. They said some evolution requirements were confusing, so they rewrote descriptions to be clearer and more consistent. They also added coordinate tracking guidance for evolution tasks that require specific locations, so instead of people just guessing, you get more direct help with where to go. They also adjusted a specific evolution requirement for an Animo called Piota. The new requirement they described was approach and successfully bond with Susuta until it turns red and follows you. So that's a very specific do this exact bonding interaction kind of requirement. They also mentioned adding basic forms of Animo as options in morph orbs, so you've got more transformation choices there. And then there were co-op changes to Operation Egg Heist, which is really relevant to that whole reward distribution in co-op conversation. The adjustment was basically eggs that are successfully submitted are now shared with the team after a safe evacuation. If the evacuation fails, you only keep the eggs you personally submitted. They also changed evacuation conditions, so you can evacuate after completing just one personal objective, like submitting one egg or collecting enough eggshell coins, and they reduced the coin requirement to make it less of a grind. Later on, they also pushed fixes aimed at reducing stuttering during loading for players launching in DX12 mode, improved team chat so it defaults properly when you're in a team, and fixed a bunch of bugs. Stuff like reward distribution issues and form switching problems for certain Animo. Then, of course, the big end of test reminder, CBT2 ended on February 8th, 2026, and this was a data wipe test, meaning the servers close and the test data gets cleared. But they also talked about 2 beta mementos tied to CBT2. One was a special CBT2 frame from the Starlight Festival event that they plan to issue to the same account at official launch. And the second was the Reunion Promise event, where you could pick one Animo to seal, so you can reunite with it at launch and continue with that same companion. They explained how that Reunion Promise worked. You pick one Animo, seal it into an egg, and then at launch, if you log in with the same account, you can claim it. They said most Animo could be sealed, but some special ones were excluded, including Prismana forms. They also clarified that certain special types like Darkler, Sparkling, and Alpha Animo were allowed. They also said you had 3 chances to change your seal selection during the event. And one detail people always ask about, will it keep its stats and everything? They said they'll strive to preserve appearance, attributes, skills, and other data as completely as possible, but also that progression systems may still be adjusted based on feedback before launch. So the spirit of it is they want you to keep your buddy, but the overall systems could still change. They also said the sealed Animo is account bound and can't be traded. So it's basically, this is your launch companion, not a market item. And lastly, just to cover 2 common talking points that came up during CBT2. One, yes, there was a delay right at the start of the test because of technical issues and a main storyline block. And they said they'd compensate players with in-game rewards once servers were live. And 2, server regions and testing scale. Some of the smaller mobile tests were clearly technical performance focused and limited, and they've implied more regional server support after launch to improve experiences for players further away from the current server locations. So yeah, that's the big roundup. Design philosophy, beta plans, platform talk, collectibles not respawning, FOMO concerns being acknowledged, summer window still vague, more bonding interactions confirmed, and more optional multiplayer coming without forcing co-op. And before you go, there's also loads of other questions on the Animo Team's Discord that are getting answered as well. I'll let you all know in my next YouTube video about other updates from the devs too. So if this helped, like the video, subscribe to keep up to date, and I'll see you in the next one.